Detroit, Michigan. This is Conversations with Lavish. It's time for us all to come together. Young, old, and everyone in between. Lavish talks about business, news, politics, networking, and anything else that's going on in the world. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Lavish Towing, and on YouTube at Lavish T. Williams. This is Lavish T. Williams.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? This has been a while, but I'm back. I hope you guys didn't forget about me and doing the podcast. Today on the show, I have Sarah Brown-Deborah. But listen, she's going to correct me on her name. It's Sarah
Brown-Deborah. The R is silent.
Say that one more time.
Deborah. The R is silent.
The R is silent. All right. So today on the show, we're going to talk about funerals, burials, and anything else that has to do with the funeral process that's going on. She is the owner of Haley Funeral Home, correct?
Yes.
Did I say that right?
Yes, Haley Funeral Directors, also known as Haley Funeral Home.
Okay, cool. How long you been into the funeral business?
Well, I've been a practicing funeral director for over 11 years, and I've been the manager of Haley Funeral Directors for the last 4.5 years.
Okay, what got you into the funeral business?
Well, I'm the product of 2 Detroit public school educators, so they had plans for me to be a teacher. But when I was in high school, I had a friend, and he had a family friend to pass. Okay. And so he invited me to come to the visitation just to support him and his family and friends. And I had never seen a funeral home prior to that. My family is from the South. Both my parents are from Memphis, Tennessee. So when people passed, everything was at the church. The visitation, the funeral. I never saw a funeral home until that time. And so when I went, it was a funeral home in the city of Detroit. I was just kind of a little shocked when I went there because I grew up in Clinton Township. So
you're not a Detroiter?
No.
Clinton Township person.
Yes, born and raised.
You said that proud. That's right. Okay. All right. Clinton Township. That's cool.
So, when you're young, you don't see a lot of people that you don't experience a lot of death. It's not as till you get older that people start dying. So I didn't have that experience. When I went to funerals, it was like great aunts and older cousins that were elderly. I was there, but everything was at the church. It was, it's no real emotional connection to those people because I didn't really know them. I was just there because I was a child and my parents went and it was a family member. So I had to be there, to be a part of the family and support them. So when I went to this funeral home, I was just shocked from the outside, the appearance of it. And, I'm used to manicure lawns.
Okay.
So that was the first thing. The second thing was when I walked into the establishment, there was a lady there, and I recall her saying, "Who are you here to see?" So I thought to myself, wow, there's no greeting, just who are you here to see? So at that time, the way it was, I graduated from high school in the 90s. So
early 90s, late 90s?
Late 90s.
Okay. All right. You're not that. You're still young.
So the way the funeral home was set up then, it was just like a big room, and they had all the caskets kind of sectioned off with dividers. So I recall going in, and I walked, and I looked at everyone. And then when I got to the very end, there was an infant in a casket.
Wow.
And so I could tell the infant, must have, it had a difficult time because you could see where an IV had been in the arm. So I assumed, something happened at birth and, the baby just didn't make it. But when I went there, I saw a little bit of blood, like in the corner of the baby's mouth. And I remember thinking, I know this mother has to be devastated to see something like this. I mean, I didn't know what to do, what I could do to make it better, but I knew that there had to be a different way for this baby to be presented. So that's when the idea came to me that maybe I need to be a funeral director and that I need to provide the type of service that I see in my community where I was currently living to, the Black community.
Okay.
Because I'm going to be honest, the white funeral homes don't look like that. Okay.
So, and this was at a white funeral home that you seen this at?
This was in a Black funeral home in the city of Detroit.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay. You were out of high school at this.
I was still in high school.
You were still in high school,
Yes.
And the idea to do the funeral stuff originated from high school.
Mm-hmm.
So now you graduate, you go to college.
Yes.
Did you go to college for mortuary science at this time?
No. So I told my mother I was interested in being a funeral director. She told me, I know nothing about being a funeral director. I am a teacher. Your father is a teacher. I'm going to send you to college to be a teacher. And if you want to do anything else, you will send yourself back to school.
All right. So she was not supportive of the mortuary science thing.
No.
So you go to college, you go for teaching.
So I majored in biology and then I minored in secondary education.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Fast forward to the mortuary science part. Because, I mean, at this point, for your mother to tell you that, did you lose sight of the mortuary science, or did you pick it up at a later date? How did you get back to picking it up?
Well, my uncle passed right when I graduated, and he lived in Columbus, Georgia. So this time we did go to the funeral home, and it was a Black-owned funeral home. They had just opened it. It had only been open maybe about a month. It was beautiful. So it had marble floors, it had a chandelier, and the people were so attentive and so courteous and caring, and they had different rooms. It wasn't like that first image I saw where everybody was just in a room with dividers. They had different rooms for families. So that's when it kind of came back to me.
Okay. All right. So now moving on along, you're in the business and you're working.
Mm-hmm.
How long have you been at Haley's Funeral Home?
4.5 years now.
And you did not start that funeral home?
No.
You bought into it? How did it become yours? What was your journey into ownership of a funeral home?
So when I first got there, it was just an opportunity to work. The previous manager had an opportunity to start his own business. And so the owner was looking for a funeral director. And so a friend referred me. I met with the owner. I came with my resume, telling him about myself, what I've done, my experiences, my education. And the funny thing was, I kind of believe he knew when I walked in he was going to hire me.
Okay. He just wanted to see you
Yes.
sell yourself, see how much energy you had, what you brung to the table.
Yes.
We want you, but we want you to sell yourself as well.
Yes. So I remember him sitting in a chair, and he looked at me and he said, I want you to run my funeral home. He said, at that point, he was thinking about putting it on the market, which I believe he did. He said, but in the meantime, I want to take care of families. It's a lot easier to sell a funeral home when it's still in operation versus one that's closed. So he said, I don't know if you'll be here a few years or what, but I need you to run my funeral home. That's all he said.
Okay. So it started from, the opportunity came from you running the funeral home as an employee.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned into a business deal as becoming an owner or partner, however it happened in the beginning, to become your funeral home.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. That's beautiful. I mean, we need more people out here, our own kind, that's buying and running and owning our own businesses and services that individuals will be needing. So that's a good thing. I salute you on that. Congratulations.
Well, thank you.
So let's talk about the business. That's what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about the funeral business. We're here to talk about funerals and everything. Why is it so important for an individual to plan their funeral? Based off of your knowledge, your experience.
So what I see every day when families come to meet with me, and it's usually because a death has occurred, they tell me what services they want. They select their merchandise. And at the end, I give them a cost and the shock factor. People have no idea, for the most part, how much services cost, okay? And that makes it difficult for them. A lot of times they have to delay funerals. They may have to select services they did not want or normally aren't tradition in their family just because of the cost. And they were just unaware. There was no planning. There was no plan in place. And I think if they would have known ahead of time, they would have done things different.
So right now today, what's the average cost of a funeral?
Okay. So the average cost of a funeral, they will say it's about $12,000.
Average. Bottom, that's the average.
Yes.
Okay, and a lot of these funerals that you're having, these people, they come, they have no knowledge of the cost for one. How are they paying for it?
Well, that's the thing. A lot of times they're able to pull together with family and get money, or there's one family member that seems to be doing a little better who just, decides to take care of it and bless the family or other family members. But not everyone has that in their family.
So a lot of the funerals that you see nowadays, they're paying cash for their funerals. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because when I was growing up, our family kept life insurance policies. Do you see a lot of people still carrying on those life insurance policies and paying for their burials with the life insurance, or is it more people paying cash?
I'm seeing a lot more people paying cash now. Yeah. And I think a lot of it is, it's a couple of reasons. I know families aren't talking like they used to. The family structure is very different now, okay? All right. I know when I turned 24, my mom came to me and she said, because she always had life insurance. My grandparents had life insurance. In fact, my grandfather had prearranged he and his wife's funeral and burial. So that was already taken care of. So she came to me and she said, Sarah, you need to get life insurance. My agent, they keep tabs of who's in families, and they knew my age. They started sending me literature of you can get a policy for $100,000 for $12 a month. That was back in the day. So my mom came to me and she said, Sarah, you see this? When you hit 25, it's going to go up. You need to go meet with my insurance guy and you need to go get some life insurance. And I was like, okay, $12 a month sounds like a good idea, but it started there. And people don't realize life insurance is also a way for families to build wealth.
Okay. All right. I'm going to need you to elaborate on that. And I ask you to elaborate on that, because what I hear when I hear people talk about life insurance and why they don't have it is because, why am I going to pay all that money for life insurance when I'm dead? I don't have to worry about that. Or why would I pay all that money for life insurance when I'll probably be living for 20 years and it's a 20-year policy? I mean, you get different people that have various different reasons, but please explain to me why it could be real profitable for a family member.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to be honest with you. Really, life insurance is to benefit the survivors, the family, the immediate family that's living. It's really not supposed to be used for covering insurance costs, but it can be. Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. See, I didn't know that. See, my interpretation of life insurance was strictly to cover the funeral expenses and possibly whatever else might need to be covered, not necessarily non-funeral expenses.
Mm-hmm. So, like I said, life insurance, when someone passes and there's a family unit, there is a loss. Usually while that person was alive, that was an income. Do you understand? They were taking care of some portion of the household bills or something like that, or just operating the household. There's a loss when someone dies, okay? So life insurance allows the family to kind of have that smooth transition. So, and keep in mind, there may be bills. That person may have had bills, debts, or things like that. That kind of helps cushion them a little bit. So they're not necessarily coming after the family's money. Okay?
Okay.
The whole thing with life insurance, I want to be honest. My philosophy, and once I had children, I just took on a whole new perspective. Okay? So I got the policy when I was 24. Okay? I'm going to tell you, when I was in, and this is where I got this, when I was in college, I actually worked at a credit union. And there was a gentleman there who worked at the credit union. He was probably, I don't know, mid-20s or so. And, you don't really think about it. I'm in college. I'm just a college student. He was married, had a child. But I noticed that sometimes he would come to me to cash his check. And when I would cash his check, I was able to see what was in his account, which was hundreds of thousands of dollars. Wow. But yet he was a teller at a credit union, making the same amount of money I was as a college student. Okay. So one day, just being nosy, I asked someone, I'm like, how does he get that much money working here? Well, they told me his parents had passed. He was an only child, and they left him hundreds of thousands of dollars in life insurance.
Wow, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So he did not even have to work. He was financially taken care of.
He could work an average job and have the American dream.
Wow.
Okay. Now, of course, he wasn't like you and I, if you know what I mean.
Yes. And that's why it's important that we are taught and we teach our kids finances, financial literacy, these insurance policies. These are important things. Far too many people waiting to the last minute. And when I say the last minute, I'm speaking on death. They wait until someone dies, and then they think of what they should have did, and now they realize what they don't have and the sacrifice they have to give and put up to pay for this, and then they're stuck with the expenses that was left behind by a loved one.
Mm-hmm. So after I got my first policy, of course, life happened. I got married. I had children. I kind of reflected back at that point. You start really, when you're young, you're kind of cocky. You think, oh, well, you got a degree, you're going to get this job, you're going to make that. No. Life doesn't happen like that. So at this point, I started thinking, okay, I'm going to work real hard. I still got my goal. But worst case scenario, if I'm not able to make the amount of money that I would like to take care of my family and provide for my children, for them to get education and security, let me get a few more life insurance policies.
Okay. So you got to think of it as a business.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So, and I look at it this way as well. If anyone should benefit from my death, it should be my children.
All right.
Yep.
They should be financially taken care of, well set. All right. So Haley Funeral Home, what makes your funeral home the funeral home that it is?
Okay. Well, I am the only funeral home that is pretty much ran by an African-American woman in Oakland County and in Southfield. Okay. So I believe women, the presence of women has been absent from the funeral service industry for a long time. And a lot of people don't realize this. We are the original caretakers of the dead. Women are. If you reflect to the Bible, when Jesus died, who went and took his body and washed it? It was women. They prepared him.
Oh, you went deep with that one. The Bible said that.
Yes. If you think about ancient civilizations, if you go and research, women were the ones out front in the procession. They were the ones that were leading. So I do know, just because of history, that it kind of changed after embalming came into place. Okay.
All right.
And then when we came into this, how should I say this? North America, the United States of America, funeral service kind of changed at that point because men were carpenters. They made caskets then. Okay. So because of that, they were the ones who were caring for the dead at that point.
Leaving the women
out.
Okay.
Yes. So women are natural nurturers. We are. We're naturally compassionate for the most part. That's why we're mothers. And this profession requires a lot of patience and a lot of care. Now, I'm not saying a man can't be caring and can't be patient, but I'm just saying it just comes natural to us. There are certain things that come natural to women, and there are certain things that just come natural to men. Okay? So at Haley Funeral Directors, I am the one. I meet with, I would say, 90% of the families. I do go on vacation once in a while. So
you gotta have a life.
I do prepare everyone.
Prepare as far as paperwork?
Prepare as far as their loved one to get them ready for their service day for their family.
Okay.
I'm also the one who, like I said, I meet with all the families. I'm the one that answers the death calls 90% of the time as well. So they get me on the phone. They're going to meet with me in the arrangement conference. I'm going to pretty much hold their hand through the entire process. A lot of funeral homes have, they're high volume, okay? So what that means is they're running like an assembly line. That doesn't happen at Haley Funeral Directors. You've got one person that's assigned to your family who will have all the answers that you will go to. You will not go to a secretary or an assistant or this or that. So I offer that, and that's peace of mind for a family. So also with the pandemic, we're one of the few funeral homes that actually, we provide a very intimate setting, meaning when there's a funeral at our facility, there's no other family at that facility at that time, but the family that has services then. Okay?
Okay.
So I know with the pandemic, a lot of families have chosen us because of that, because they're concerned about being around other people and, being in large crowds and not knowing people. So that's a benefit. You're not going to see too many funeral homes doing that.
Okay, well, I mean that's good to hear. I just need to know a little bit about why your funeral home, and that's good. With the pandemic, let's speak on this. How has, and I hope I'm saying this right, but how has the funeral business been since the pandemic? Since the pandemic, I'm sure you've been very, very busy with funerals and death. How do you deal with that?
So it kind of comes in waves, believe it or not. So last year at this time, we were at a peak. So we were very busy. But I kept, how can I say this? When I started hearing about what was going on with this virus in Italy, in China, I did not wait to hear from the governor to say, okay, let's limit things to 25. I started shutting down the funeral home then a little bit, meaning no walk-ins. I started doing all arrangements electronically. Only time I saw people was for their service or when they had to come in to sign paperwork that needed to be notarized.
Now, when the pandemic first hit and people are dying from this contagious disease, how did that affect your mental state of mind, knowing that some of these bodies that's coming into your funeral home was affected by the COVID? I mean, did that bother you mentally with the thoughts of wondering, hey, could I be subject to catch this disease by dealing with these bodies? How was that?
Well, it was a little, I'd say it does play on your mind because it wasn't enough science and documentation out there to exactly know what this disease does, how it affects people. Honestly, they didn't really know how people were getting it, it seemed. But we at Haley Funeral Directors in every funeral home should be using universal precautions with every case, okay? So by doing that, we know we limit exposure to COVID-19 and other viruses and bloodborne pathogens as well.
Okay. Now we're going to fast forward the time to now.
Mm-hmm.
We went about a year. The numbers in Michigan dropped. Now you're working in the funeral home. You're seeing these bodies coming in with the documentation showing the cause of death. As you stated before on a private call with me, and you said the numbers are up.
Yes.
And I want to speak to you about that because you can speak firsthand about the numbers. We see the stuff on the news. We hear the news. People see the numbers going up. They just see the numbers. Some people don't believe what's going on. Speak on that. What's really going on as far as these numbers? Are the COVID cases really what the news say and show?
Well, the news is saying they're going up. It's just they're focusing on a lot of other stories as well. You know, last year at this time, that was the news, and pretty much that was it. But yeah, we are in another wave right now, whether people know it or not. I will say I can't speak on what's going on at other funeral homes. I'm not sure, but I know as far as our facility, I'd say about 70% of them right now have the COVID. We're affected by COVID-19 that I'm providing services to.
Wow, so it is an increase.
Yes.
COVID is increasing.
It is.
From your standpoint, seeing how many bodies are coming in from the death of COVID. What was the numbers like for you about 2 months ago at the funeral home? How many were actually in there for COVID about 2-3 months ago?
I went through periods where I didn't even have any. I didn't provide services to anyone that had COVID for a few months. So it, like I said, it kind of subsided and now it's back up. I'm not sure if this is contributed to the governor not being able, having limited power now and not being able to, restrict things like she had been before. I'm not sure if that's possible. It's likely because that's the only thing that's different from now to then. But okay. Yeah.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, you made the news about was it a year ago? Up under a year ago? You did a charity funeral for a child.
Yes.
Correct. Very, very, very sad situation and incident that happened with this child. A mother should never have to lose her infant. How old was he? Under 2 years old? Or was it 6?
I believe he was 8.
Okay, an 8-year-old child who was murdered. A mother should never have to bury her child, especially an 8-year-old. Mm-hmm. And your funeral home paid for the funeral? Is that correct?
That is correct.
Donated to the funeral?
Yes. So when I heard the story on the news, I was touched. For someone to do something so horrible and evil to a child. Of course, there were other victims as well. So I wanted to make contact with Mom, okay? Mm-hmm. And that was my main concern because I'm a mother. I have 2 children. And I could only imagine what she was feeling at that time. And I'm sure she wasn't even thinking about funeral services. She was probably more so thinking about, her loss, anger, what happened. So I went and I made contact with them. I let them know that I would be willing to offer free services to them just because I was touched. I'm a mother. I would work for this family. I told them that because initially I didn't talk to Mom. I talked to another family member. And I said, if you can just let her know, I'm not looking to do anything but just help her. Just let her know that this is an option here. I'm a mother. I will do everything I can and honor her wishes. And I'll try my best to make this as easy as possible for her.
Okay. Was that your first funeral as such as far as donating your service to a family?
Yes, it was.
And how long have you been in business?
Well, I've been at Haley 4.5 years.
Okay.
But this is the first time I've been in a position to be able to do that as the manager and operator.
Oh, well, that's a good thing.
Yes.
You blessed somebody that needed your help at that particular time. So that's definitely a great thing whenever you can help somebody out. So I want to get more relaxed about the whole funeral business now. Okay. I mean, we touched on a lot of important things. Let's get a little relaxed now. The funeral business. Okay. Everybody thinks, and I'm one of those people. The funeral homes, they're making a killing. They're getting paid. They're making a bankroll. Is that true? Let's talk about the funeral business. What people don't know. The misconception of the funeral home.
Okay. So the funeral home, people don't realize this, has a lot of overhead. Okay. So we try to cater to families when they come to us. We know there's a need. You got to realize this isn't 200 years ago where the funeral director is making the casket, like I referred to earlier. We have to order the casket from a casket company. There's already a price point on there. As far as if there's a burial, there has to be a vault. The cemetery's requiring that. We're ordering that from a company where there's already a price point on there. Okay. Then you have things like flowers. Okay, I'm not a florist, but we do have a florist as a vendor. We try to make it as easy as possible, so it's one-stop shopping for the family. They're already dealing with a loss. We just want to have everything together. So that goes on our bill, but we don't actually make money off of that. That is a cash advance section of the contract, which means we are paying that out to someone else. As far as most funeral homes, they do contract with car companies for limousines and sedans. So we have to pay those individuals as well for when families choose that service to have a car to pick them up at home and bring them to the funeral and take them to the cemetery and return them back home. So people don't think about that. All of that I just named is probably a good $3,000 to $4,000 on a bill that we don't even see, depending on how outlandish they get with it. Okay.
Okay, so you just explained to us, when dealing with a funeral home, before you think the funeral home is making a whole bunch of money, they have pretty much subcontracted themselves out to various different people. The florist, the casket company, the whoever else.
Programs, I forgot about that.
The obituaries, the this and the that, and all these other people. So a lot of people that's out there thinking that the funeral homes are making so much money, keep in mind, they have all these other people that they have to pay that you guys don't think about in the process of paying the funeral home. So the people, the customers, they're just paying you one lump sum of money.
Yes.
And that's why they're thinking that the funeral home is making so much money, because they might have to give you a check for $7,500, $10,000, or whatever the amount of money is. So that's where people get it mixed up, messed up, misconstrued when they say the funeral home is the one that's making all the killing, when they have bills that they have to also pay out to these companies for the services that you guys rendered from the funeral home. Okay.
Yeah. And so not only that, you've got to realize we have to sustain our building. We have to have it so it's heated, it's cooled, so we can provide the right environment to care for deceased remains, to make sure they stay in good condition. We have to make sure that the place is clean and sanitized, which takes chemicals and other equipment and things that we have to get from companies. Not only that, the staff, I know we're of service to families. When they call us, we're there, we're summoned, we're front and center. However, I'm going to be honest with you, the people working at the funeral home aren't doing that for free. We have to pay them.
That's where they forget that they have a job and they're there to work.
Yes.
Wow, okay. I mean, that's just information to put out there, because people that don't know now, I'm hoping that this is information that you learned that will help you understand why the funeral home charges what they charge for their services and those cars that they get. The Bentleys and the Rolls Royces and the Benz limos and the buses, those are provided by the funeral homes at times, correct?
That's right.
And they vary in prices. What's the most expensive car out there that people are paying for and wondering why the bill is so high?
Typically, it's the limousines. That's what most families want, are the limousines. And so, like I said, a lot of companies and funeral homes, we still contract, even those funeral homes that have limousines. If they're doing high volume, there are some big funeral homes doing that, they still have to go to car companies to get even more because they're serving so many families on the weekend.
And that means that if they have to go get more, that means that you have to spend more.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I just wanted to speak on that. Here's another thing that's going on that's trending nowadays. And I want the honest truth. You can be brutally honest because we just relaxing. We just telling it like it is on the show. When people die and they go online with these GoFundMe accounts looking for donations for a funeral, do they come to you with that kind of stuff as well?
Well, usually the GoFundMe is something the family does themselves. You know, I just say that, you know, this is what our cost is, XYZ. I'll need it paid 24 hours before your service date. Okay. So that's pretty much them on their own doing that, collecting or soliciting the money.
Does it work? What's your take on the GoFundMe?
Well, from what I've seen, my experience, it does not. GoFundMe is not a proper replacement for a financial plan in place. Okay, so most of the GoFundMes that I see people do, they may get $500 or $1,000. Well, a funeral is maybe close to $10,000. That was nothing. That's just a drop in the bucket. So was it worth it letting people know that you cannot take care of your loved one? A funeral is all about respect and dignity. There's no dignity in soliciting or begging. What people need to do is start taking responsibility. The individual, when you become a certain age, you know that there are going to be costs, okay? Whatever they are, whether you choose cremation or funeral, and you need to have money set aside. You need to inform your family member, whoever, your child, your husband, how to access those funds to take care of you when that time comes. Don't leave a burden for your family. The only time that GoFundMes actually do well is when there's a tragic death or a story goes nationwide, which is usually it's tragic. That's the reason why it goes nationwide. People go in their pockets for children. If it's tragic, they go in their pockets for maybe a woman or a mother who was just happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. You know, other than that, the rest of these deaths, people are becoming desensitized because every time you look around, there's a GoFundMe for a funeral or something out there. And I'm going to be honest, it's not the community's responsibility to take care of your loved one or yourself.
So you're saying GoFundMe is absolutely no replacement for insurance?
It is not.
Okay. Because I see a lot of GoFundMe accounts when someone dies, someone sets up GoFundMe, but then I guess it goes back to what you say is a funeral, you're supposed to be honored.
Mm-hmm.
You're supposed to show, hey, we were responsible enough to take care of our loved ones in our time of mourning, whereas sometimes it can be an embarrassment to the family. Me personally, I know if something happens to me, I do not want anyone out there having charity dinners for me, selling fish dinners. I have insurance. Bury me, call my insurance people, and let it be. I don't want to be sitting out here living this lavish life, and if something tragic happens to me, they have to go to a fundraiser to raise funds to bury me. That wouldn't be cool for me. I can't speak for anybody else, but that's not what I want. So maybe a lot of people that's watching, you should really consider looking into a life insurance policy. Do the research. It's very cheap. It's reasonable. How much do those life insurance policies start off at?
It's going to depend on your age and, of course, your health. your condition of your health at this time. It's best to get them early. Get them when you're young. Like I see 20-year-olds now, I tell them, go get a life insurance policy. You're going to pay $12 and probably get a $100,000 policy, okay? But the main thing is the life insurance policy is one way of protection. The next thing I suggest is a pre-arrangement with a funeral home, okay? And so that is a way of, like I said, conserving on money as well. So people don't realize when you come to me with a life insurance policy, we have to actually use a third-party processing company for that. Okay, so there is a fee on top of that. That company is going to verify the life insurance, make sure it's not contestable, it's in good standing, that whoever took the life insurance policy out didn't borrow against it. Okay. And once they do all of that paperwork and they get the verification, they're going to next day mail the funeral home a check. Okay. It's essentially a cash advance. Okay. So they charge a fee. I know at my funeral home, that fee is 5% of the total cost of the bill. That is tacked onto the contract when a life insurance policy is used.
So when a life insurance policy is used, you're not paid before the funeral. That's what you said. You're not paid.
Sometimes we're not. But what I do, our policy is we just need to get the family to sign insurance assignment form. Okay. So that's basically the beneficiaries giving permission for us and the third party to inquire about the policy and take out the funeral cost of the contract. Okay. So what I do is once I deal with them, it usually takes about 2 to 3 days. I just need to hear that we are verified. We don't get paid right then. Usually it's a day or two. They'll next day mail us a check. I just need to hear I am verified that the funeral was, the insurance is verified before the funeral day. Then I know I'm going to be paid, and we just continue moving forward.
So a lot of times, here we go again about the funeral expenses. A lot of times you are coming out of your pocket to cover expenses to these other companies before you even get paid.
Exactly, we do.
So you have to definitely have cash on hand. You have to have enough capital just to cover it. And when you talk about having enough capital, you're talking about at any given time having enough capital to cover 2 or 3 funerals that you might have at any given time.
Exactly.
That's expensive.
I
mean, that's a lot of things that a lot of people don't think about.
Exactly. We front a lot of money and wait for us to be paid, even for the families. Sometimes I start ordering things once I hear that word, okay, this is looking like it's all together, we're going to get paid. We're ordering stuff. These companies send the stuff to us, whether it's casket, flowers, the limousine companies, they're contracted with us. Yes. And some of them have to be paid at the end of the week. Some of them have to be paid at the end of the month.
And their concern is not what you have to do.
It is not.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, you got to have some capital. Now, do you offer cremating services?
Yes, we do.
Okay. What's the trend with cremation nowadays? Is it because it's cheaper? Is it just preference? Like what just talk about cremation.
Well, I'm seeing 2 types of families that choose cremation. So we've got those that, there's a financial aspect where that's not their tradition, but they're choosing that because they have to do something. Okay. And that's what they can afford. But then there's this new progressive form of, group of people, should I say, that they're like, I don't want to put that money in the ground. I want, my family to get as much of the money as possible, or they feel that it's more environmental friendly than using chemicals such as embalming fluid and things like that, and then putting it in the ground, which, could enter into our waterways and things like that. So I see the 2 groups of people that are choosing cremation, those 2 mainly.
And what's the cost of cremation services versus a funeral?
Okay.
A burial funeral.
Okay. So as far as I can only speak for my funeral home, okay, because our overhead's different and where we are is different. Different funeral homes have different prices. So a cremation where I am, you're looking at $1,300. Okay. That includes picking up the deceased from the place of death, bringing them to the funeral home. That includes filing all the paperwork that is necessary for a cremation, filing the death certificate, as well as getting cremation authorization. So people don't realize this. I actually have 2 costs for Oakland County people that pass in Oakland County and people that pass in Wayne County. And the reason why is because the medical examiner has to investigate pretty much any death before a cremation approval is given, and they give the cremation approval. Okay, so basically, because cremation is irreversible, they just want to make sure it's no foul play. They just need to see a death certificate, a doctor signed off on it, and that it's natural causes and that it coincides with all the other records. Okay, so Oakland County charges a little less than Wayne County. I'm just going to say that.
Now, why is that?
I have no idea. You'd have to talk to the local government there.
Wow. I mean, I would think it'd be the other way around.
So
that's interesting. I'm gonna have to look into that.
Yes. So there are 2 costs. I know we do that. I'm sure some other funeral homes probably do as well, but that is the reason why, because we have to get cremation approval from the medical examiner. The medical examiner is actually going to bill the funeral home at the end of the month for all of the cremation costs
that you have to spend out of your pocket.
Yes.
Even before you get paid.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Wow. That's interesting. I mean, I'm learning a lot. I'm just listening. I'm just learning more about the funeral business as possible. I mean, that's why I'm glad to have you on the show so you can educate me and whoever else is watching.
Mm-hmm.
So what else do you guys do down at the funeral home?
So when you say what else we do, what do you mean?
We got the burial.
Okay.
We got the cremation.
So you can have a funeral and a cremation as well. Some people don't know that. Just because you choose a cremation.
You said, say that again.
You can have a funeral and then a cremation.
Okay,
yeah.
I see. Now I was thinking that you said burial and cremation. I had to.
You can do that as well too.
A burial.
Yes,
a cremation.
After the person is cremated, the cremated remains can be laid to rest at a cemetery. Yes.
Never knew that.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. How often does that happen?
It depends. Mostly I see that with the families that are more close-knit and that maybe all their families at one cemetery, so they want to keep them together.
And that's for cost reasons?
No, just that so their families all together, they just choose cremation, but they're still laid to rest at the cemetery, which is really a good idea. I try to encourage families to come up with a plan for cremated remains when they cremate their family member. Okay, and I'm gonna tell you why. So most people, it's a cost issue. I understand it is a little more economical. They come and get the cremated remains, they take them home. Now just think, if everyone in their family is cremated, do you realize maybe 20 years from now, there's going to be one family member with 20 or 30 cremated remains in a closet somewhere?
Right.
Some of the people they're going to have possession of, they may not have even known. They have no emotional attachment to. Okay? So what I always tell families, of course, they are the ones that have to make these decisions, is to consider giving your loved one a resting place. It's fine if you want to keep them with you for a little while, but just think, if it's your mother, father, spouse, I mean, if it's your spouse and you have children, the children, they're going to have memories and they'll do a good job being a gatekeeper of the remains. However, if it's not one of those situations, at some point, these remains are going to come into the possession of someone that has no knowledge of them. Give them a resting place. That's why you hear these stories of cremated remains in abandoned cars. You hear of, in garages, or people have thrown them away and things like that. Give them a resting place.
I'm going to stick with being buried. That's what I want to do. I want to stick with being buried. Don't burn my body up. Don't have my ashes laying around. Don't have me riding around in the car. Don't have me in an abandoned house. I'm just going to stick with the traditional burial funeral. Just put me in the ground, call it a day, and I should be fine. That's what I'm going to do. Where's your funeral home located?
Okay. We are on Northwestern Highway, So our cross streets are 10 Mile and Evergreen. We're right off the service drive. Our address is 24525 Northwestern Highway, Southfield, Michigan 48075. You can find us on Instagram or Facebook, Haley Funeral Directors. Okay. Our number is 248-356-4800. If anyone has a need for services at need, feel free to give me a call. I'd be happy to help you and, work out any questions you have, concerns, or even if you're considering pre-arrangement or pre-planning, I can help with that as well.
Okay. I want to ask you this question. I want to just go into a little bit of fun real quick. What was the most dangerous feeling type of funeral have you done? Have you had one of those where you just thought this funeral is about to get out of hand and I just want to get out of here, get out of Dodge. I don't know what's about to happen. Has it ever been one of those type of funerals that you had?
Not at Haley Funeral Directors.
But you experienced.
I have experienced
share a good story with us. We want to hear one of those funeral stories.
So I was working this was before Haley, after I had just licensed as a funeral director. I was working at a funeral home, and they had a family, which it's often families have disputes and spats, like they don't agree, about funerals or who should be in control or making decisions. So it was one of those type of situations. So I was just there to direct the service. I didn't even work with the family from beginning to end. I was just called in to help with the services, the funeral services. And so just in the middle of it, I guess it was a lady who had a child by the deceased and another woman who had a child by the deceased who was a wife. It just got into a big conflict, and then people took sides. And at that point, I just retreated to the back. And then the rest of the gentlemen went and removed the casket. And because that is our main concern is the funeral home. We're there to protect the remains. Okay. And then, some other gentlemen made the people who were actually aggressive leave. So I guess they continued part 2 of what went on in the funeral home outside.
Outside the funeral home?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Have you seen any fights at funerals? Physical fights inside the funeral home?
I actually saw one at a funeral once.
At a funeral? Oh, yeah.
At a church.
In the church, a physical fist fight, a brawl, confrontation.
It was just more like a smack pow, and then people stopped it. So.
Oh, wow. Yeah. You got any more interesting funeral story? We got to hear some. You got to share. You got to share a couple with us. You got to share some funeral stories, because most people wouldn't expect certain things to happen unless they're there to see it happen.
Yeah, well, I think most of the most interesting ones that I have, and this is why I say people need to talk to the funeral director, come to funeral homes. Even if you're not ready to make a decision, just get the information. We're not salespeople. We're not just trying to sell you something. I think that's what everyone thinks. I mean, honestly, a funeral, me working with a family is going to take about a week to 2 weeks. I don't want to work with any family that doesn't want my services or is not happy with me. Trust me, it's not going to be pleasant for me.
What's a typical funeral turnaround?
So most families want to do it within a week. It can be up to 2 weeks. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Right now, I'm sometimes seeing 2 weeks just because of the pandemic, just because of the availability of our chapel and things like that, or the cemetery.
All right. So let me ask you this. I'm a motorcycle rider.
Okay.
Ride motorcycles. Have you done motorcycle funerals?
I have, yes.
You being a funeral director, share with us the motorcycle funerals. I know how we are.
Yes.
I know how we are as bikers. Do you like motorcycle funerals?
I shouldn't say this, but I do.
Oh, you do? Okay. Does it give you a roar? Does it give you a thrill or some type of excitement when you see these bikers pull up with their nice motorcycles making all that noise?
So what it is it was actually a few years ago, my cousin, which is my husband's first cousin, so he's my cousin too, he passed while riding his motorcycle. He had an accident. And so the family, of course, chose me. So he actually, he was riding back from Indiana. So we went and got him. And for the funeral, I had no idea the unity and that they have. That was my first experience. Like, riders came from Ohio, Kentucky, all parts of Michigan.
Oh, yeah. They're going to come out in numbers.
They came. And so what I did, the family chose to have, for him to have one last ride in a motorcycle hearse. And so what I did, of course, the motorcycle hearse, gentleman, he was driving that, and I still drove the hearse because I have to make sure traffic is clear and good, because just people are used to seeing hearses, and that is the standard way, or emergency vehicle according to our laws. Okay. But what I like so much about it, like, they just moved like a team. Like, before I got to intersections,
they already had it blocked off.
Yes. Yes. It was just beautiful. Oh my God. And the people didn't move.
I know they didn't.
They didn't move at all.
2 reasons why. They can't move because we taking over the street. Number 2, they shouldn't move because it's just not a good idea. It's not a good idea to move. You don't want to move. You don't want to interrupt any bikers at a motorcycle funeral. That's not a good idea. So out of all these years, this was the first time you actually experienced a motorcycle funeral.
It was, yes.
Wow.
Yes. So I think what it is, like, since I'm a relatively young funeral director, most funeral directors are elderly men. I'm open to doing non-traditional things. I'm open to being creative. I'm open to self-expression. So I was the one that presented the idea to my family. They had no idea that such an option existed.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's definitely you. If anyone that rides a motorcycle passes, and we hope they don't, but we know many will, the bike community, as a community, they're going to come out, even if they don't even know the guy or female, they're going to come out as a unit, and we're going to send them off really, really well, and we're going to ride for that biker. Bikers, like you say, they're going to come from all over. If they know someone that knows someone, they're going to come. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter the distance. They're going to come and share their farewells. That's just a thing that a lot of bikers do. That's how they respect the fallen bikers, showing up to these funerals, showing their camaraderie, showing their sympathy. That's what they do as bikers. That's what we do as bikers. Their family, they're not going to forget that funeral. They're going to talk about it for years to come, because those bikes, they're going to show up in numbers. Yeah, that's definitely something. So, yeah, I was just wondering how that was, you being a funeral director, when there's a motorcycle funeral involved, because we have a tendency of tearing that street up, whatever street. We're going to block traffic for miles, and it's going to be a swarm of bikes. Then you have the cars. So who's ever waiting to pass traffic, oh man, I definitely feel sorry for them, because they're going to be waiting about a good average 7 to 12 minutes before they can actually proceed. And that's just the way it is as being a biker. I was just wondering, I just wanted to ask you about that. So we're going to end this podcast shortly. I'm hoping that she answered any questions some people might have had, some people might have thought about. We have been trying to go down the comments, and pretty much everything that was asked in the comment box, we answered. So I'm not sure if anybody else has
I see one
anything.
about life insurance if someone is not insurable. So that's when a prearrangement with the funeral home is the best idea. And I do want to speak on this real quick. People don't realize you save money when you do a prearrangement with a funeral home, because, for one, you lock into current prices. So every year or every 2 to 3 years, inflation is occurring. Things are going up. The services and goods around us are going up every year. Okay.
All right.
You get a prearrangement for today. You lock into today's prices. And what happens is, I get families, they always wonder, is their money safe? Okay. It is safe because what happens is the funeral home doesn't even have access to that money. Our state has laws that regulate funeral prearrangements, okay, and the money. We have to escrow it with a third-party escrow agent, okay? And so when that happens, the person who took out the prearrangement will get statements from that financial institution. You're going to get statements yearly showing your money's there, how much interest has occurred. That interest, of course, is going to go to the funeral home because that's the offset inflation that's going to be naturally taking place.
Okay, because I've heard people mention prepaid funeral expenses, but nowadays, I mean, you have so many people that's so leery to give their money away, especially when they can't see what their money is being spent on. And with all the fraud and all the schemes, then you got some funeral homes that go out of business. People are leery about that. So, I mean, I'm hearing what you're speaking on as far as the pre-planning of the funeral. But what about the money that's spent by these customers if the funeral home goes out of business? What happens with their money at that point?
Okay. So if it's a prearrangement, that is the benefit. That is the reason why that we have these laws in place. Because I'm going to be honest, a long time ago, there were funeral homes and funeral directors that did not do the right thing. Or they closed. They commingled that money with their operational money and things got bad and it got spent. That is why it must go to a third-party escrow agent. At that point, you can transfer that prearrangement to any funeral home.
Okay.
And that's one thing that I think a lot of people don't know as well who do have prearrangements, okay? Of course, you're thinking you're going to go to that funeral home, but you can transfer it. Any funeral home that provides services and provides that escrow agent with a certified copy of a death certificate can get those funds for their services that have been rendered.
It's like a bank.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like a bank. Okay. That's useful information. So they can be pre-planning their funeral. How much money is required, and how much do they know? I mean, because I'm sure at that particular time of death, they're not sure how much money they will need. What's a typical range that they should at least have invested in there?
Well, what they do, that's why I say do the prearrangement. You want to set up an appointment with me at the funeral home. You're going to come in. You're going to select your services, with meaning, do you want a funeral and a burial or funeral and cremation? I'm going to draw up a contract with all the services, merchandise. We're going to have an exact cost. That's how that goes. And then the family with a prearrangement can even make payments, okay?
Like a layaway.
You can, exactly. So I know what we require is 20% down to start the prearrangement. I don't really hassle families about, okay, well, every month at the 30th, I need this or that. What I tell families is, look, this is to protect you and your family, okay? It benefits you to take care of this soon. If you want to pay $100 a month, $200 a month, that's totally up to you. Just be mindful. If something were to happen, if you are no longer here, your family can only get what was paid in. So they're still going to have a bulk of money to come up with at that time. And that kind of defeats the purpose of the prearrangement. You're doing that to eliminate some of those decisions and burdens on your family.
Okay. I hope that you guys are taking notes to what's going on as far as the funeral stuff. And I'm hoping that it's informative because we're all going to die. I hate to say it like that. It's the truth. Can't get out of it. We're living to die, and that's just the facts. So you need to plan ahead. Get with your loved ones, get with your family members, come up with a plan, a strategy in the event of a loss. Because a lot of times death comes at various different unseen times. So we definitely have to come up with a plan so that our families are not just sitting out there scrambling. Again, like she said, you got a lot of people that go to these funerals. They go to these funeral homes. They have funeral plans. No one has anything in order. How often do you have a funeral where more than one person are trying to organize? How does that work? How does that go? Because it's like, I guess that'll be a family issue. That'll be like sound like it'll be chaotic, where you have this person over here wants to do it this way. This person over here wants to be in control. How does that work out? How do you be the mediator in that, or are you the mediator in that?
When I do have those situations, I am the mediator. People don't realize that, because no one wants to think that someone is, really over everyone and kind of coordinating things. So I just do a lot of sitting and listening first, because a lot of times it's just people who haven't been heard, believe it or not. I see a lot of that with families, like when someone was ill, one family member took care of them and another one worked. And then when they come to the arrangement conference, is that animosity. And sometimes it seems like, a lot of times, it may be the one that took care of them may not be the one that was responsible for financial things, okay? So you've got that little rift right there. It's real easy for me, because I'm there. My whole goal the whole time is to lay their loved one to rest, for them to be dispositioned. That means them going to a crematory or them going to a cemetery, okay? They can't stay at the funeral home. At a certain point, that's illegal, okay? So what I do, I just kind of listen, and then I step in. If they're equal in kinship, such as children, I'll let them know, well, we need to make this decision. Okay, these are your options. You tell me what you want to do. Usually cost can eliminate some of them, okay? So then they can narrow down what their choices are, okay? So that's how I approach that if I need to. Sometimes I even tell people, would you like me to step out and you all talk in private, and I'll come right back, and then you can have this decision for me? Or do you want to go home, talk amongst yourselves, and then call me back and let me know what you choose? When I do that, a lot of times, by me remaining calm and me being there with the information, I think they're almost a little embarrassed at first. Like, it's someone there who's sensible, who's seeing all of this. And so usually that works for the most part.
Okay, that's cool. Definitely needs to know that. Got a question, though. Mm-hmm. These are just random funeral home questions that I be having, that I'm thinking about. Is it just me? When you grew up, did you feel like people that worked in the funeral homes were kind of weird?
I did.
They just seem to be very, very different. Are they really different?
I see that. I'm going to be honest with you. There are going to be some colleagues that are going to be upset with me. I see that with funeral home families, where the whole generations have worked in the funeral home. They are a little strange. They may not know it, but they are.
I agree.
So I am a first generation funeral director. So I didn't have I think what it is, a lot of funeral homes, either they lived in the funeral home, or our work is 24/7. They included their children in it. Even if they weren't working, they were around. So they conditioned them to, be more subdued, to not talk, not react, not do this all the time. And now it's kind of manifested into these adults that are like emotionalists. It is weird. I agree.
How has being a funeral home director desensitized you with death, or has it?
It hasn't desensitized me with death. I think what it is, I feel like I try to connect with every family that comes to me and that I meet. I don't treat it as a business transaction, because I want to know how that person was. Like, I'm going to give you an example. When I go downstairs, that's where all of our, we keep the deceased people downstairs in the prep room, I know everyone by name.
That right there, listen, before you go any further, that right there sounded creepy.
No, why?
You just said when you go downstairs,
Yes.
you know everyone by name.
Yes.
Carry on.
Yes. Because that is the approach you have to take so you're not desensitized. You keep in mind these are still people. They're not objects. Do you understand?
Okay. Mrs. Jones is right here. You have Edward over there.
Yes. Yes. I do that.
Eric's laying over there.
Yes.
Okay.
I
all
do
right.
that. And sometimes my assistant's looking at me like, who? What? I'm like, who are you talking about? I'm like, listen, these are still people. You do know that, right?
It's just completely it's completely funny. Not funny, serious matter, death, but just talking with you about this. Talking to you about you calling them by their names, you know this and interesting conversation. I mean, I got a lot of random thoughts. I can't think of them all while I got you right here, but I got like a lot of these random thoughts of things that go on in the funeral homes. Have you had one of those scary moments in the funeral home? A startled moment from a body?
No, that doesn't happen. That's one of those myths that's
Is
out
it?
there. It is.
Okay. No bodies laying on the cutting table and they just bounce back up.
No.
Okay. I mean, I hear these stories. I don't know if they're true. I mean, I got you here. You can verify it.
Yeah.
I hear, they're taking their last breath. There are all these different strange things that might go on in the funeral home with the body that's deceased. None of that kind of stuff
No.
that you experienced.
No.
Okay.
I'm one of those people, like my assistant. He's a gentleman, older gentleman. Sometimes you'll hear noises. It's just buildings make noise sometimes. Things pop or things like that. It could be the boiler or the furnace downstairs making a noise, and you just happen to hear it because it's so quiet in the funeral home. So it comes upstairs, the sound. And sometimes we'll hear things, and it's not a lot. It's just maybe like, once in a while. And the first thing he does is look at me, and I look at him, and I start walking towards whatever the sound is. And he's like, "What are you doing, Sarah?" I'm going to find out what it is.
Brave lady. I hear some noise. I'm going to let you go ahead and see what the noise is. I'm a guy. I'm a strong guy. I'm in a funeral home. I hear a noise. I am not going to go see what the noise is. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go the opposite way, if not out the door.
So my husband, I'm going to share something with you. He teases me about that because I do that at home too. And he's like, see, that's because you're from the suburbs. Go sit down.
And I'm not afraid of death. I'm not afraid of death or dead bodies, but I'm not going to just really walk through a graveyard at night for no reason. I'm not going to really walk through a funeral home in the dark or hearing some noises for no reason. I'm just not going to do that. That's not going to be lavish. But that's funny. I'm glad to have you on this show today. I think we talked about a lot of interesting things that should help some people. I was hoping somebody was going to call in my number today. I wanted to try out the call feature, but no one called. We'll do it at another date, at another time. Let everybody know the address of where you're located at again for those that just came in.
Okay. Haley Funeral Directors is located on Northwestern Highway. Our cross streets are 10 Mile and Evergreen. Our address is 24525 Northwestern Highway, Southfield, Michigan, 48075. I can be reached at 248-356-4800. And we are on Instagram as well as Facebook.
All right, cool. I got somebody to ask, what are the schooling requirements for a funeral director?
Okay. So it varies according to the state. Now, I'm going to tell you what the requirements here are in the state of Michigan, okay? So it requires a funeral director must go and complete a mortuary science program, okay? There's one at Wayne State University. It is a bachelor's degree, okay? There are other states that have mortuary science programs that are associate's degrees as well. Michigan does not have a requirement of the type of degree in mortuary science. You just must have completed a mortuary science program. After you complete your program, you will have to take a national board exam, okay? And then you will have to license for that state. So you will have to sit for a state test, which that basically is a state that's just a state test that pretty much goes over the laws that regulate the profession for that state, because it can vary from state to state. Now, in Michigan, we are a dual license state, meaning I can direct funerals and embalm. So funeral director, embalmer, mortician, all of those are synonymous terms in the state of Michigan. However, in some other states, a lot of them in the South, those are actually separate positions. So you can have a funeral director, which pretty much just meets with families, does all the paperwork, death certificate processing, order services, and merchandise. And then you have an embalmer who pretty much just embalms and prepares the remains. So, but they can be dual if they have both licenses, okay? But in Michigan, we are a dual license state. If you're a funeral director, you must have gone to school to do both.
Okay, great information. Great information. All right, well, we're going to end this show. I'm glad to have Sarah Brown. Say your last name. I'm not going to mess it up.
Deborah.
You sure it ain't Deborah and you just put that little accent thing on the end of it?
It's no accent. It's just Deborah. There's no accent. My father-in-law is from Liberia. It's Liberian.
Oh, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, you got you some multicultural stuff going on with you.
Do you know Liberia is the country in Africa that when slaves were freed, some of them moved back there and settled?
History. Very knowledgeable. That's
Thank
great.
you.
That's great. I could sit and talk to you for a while. You just so laid back. What college did you graduate from?
So I went to, for my first degree, Lane College, which is a small HBCU in Jackson, Tennessee. That's where I got my bachelor's degree in biology and secondary education. After I finished Lane College, I came back home. I did work a little bit, but I did go to Marygrove because I had to take some accounting classes to go to mortuary school. So I took accounting classes. Of course, I wanted to use financial aid because Mommy paid for the first degree and she wasn't paying for any more. I told you what she said.
Right. She wasn't feeling that death stuff. Listen, you got to deal with that on your own. I'm not doing that.
And so actually I completed a forensic science program while I was at Marygrove as well. So, and then I went to Wayne State and completed the mortuary science program.
And they don't know this. I want to share this. You're AKA. What school did you pledge from?
Well, I actually was initiated into the graduate chapter of Alpha Rho Omega here in the city of Detroit. So I did not pledge an undergrad.
But you're an AKA.
Yes.
I will go into more about that, but I know, and you should know, even some of them know. I know about you AKAs. I know about you.
What is it you know?
I ain't going into detail.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I hope it's good things.
It's interesting things.
Okay.
I know how you guys roll. I know how you females roll over there.
We're the first.
I thought the Deltas were the first.
No, they're the second.
I'm not about to go there with you. We're not about to start no Delta AKA stuff because every AKA would tell me the same thing. So, all right. I'm glad y'all tuned in. Sarah, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
No
Thank
problem.
you.
I'm not sure how to say this because of your line of business. I hope that you get a lot of business. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I hope that, business comes your way. They think of Haley Funeral Directors whenever there's death in the family.
Okay. Well, I just want to close with this, because I know people don't really know how to say it, but people are born and people die every day. And what I always say is, I just hope that they think enough of me to consider me for using me for their services, because I will take care of their loved one and their family while they're with me through their journey. That's one of the things I tell every family in the arrangement room. I'm going to be with you through this journey till the end. Okay?
All right. Oh, is it true? Do they got waterproof caskets? Or is that a myth?
No, there's no waterproof casket.
Okay. Just was wondering. So we die, it rains, we might be floating in our casket.
It's a possibility depending on the whatever grave or area in the cemetery you're in, what sea level it is at.
Okay. Just figured out, Alex. All right, y'all. Have a good one. We're out of here.